In this video, I want to cover the basics of realizing a 2-5-1 progression in jazz. Recall that each of these three chords possesses a different quality. The 2 chord is a minor 7th, the 5 is a dominant 7th, and the 1 is a major 7th. Now, since the 2 chord contains a minor triad and the other 2 are major triads, all 3 of these chords incorporates a perfect 5th above their root. In a previous video, I described the perfect 5th as a perfect consonance. Its perfect blend is a result of its simple frequency ratio, that 2-to-3 ratio. If I can now take that one step further, a string that's vibrating over its full length simultaneously vibrates at all of those other ratios at the same time. So the full string, also half, also third, and fourth, and so on and so forth. These ancillary vibrations naturally weaken and are less prominent as the wavelengths get smaller and farther away from the fundamental. This A vibrates at 440 Hertz. That's 440 vibrations per second. Regardless of what instrument produces this pitch, this A vibrates at 440 Hertz. Trumpet, violin, oboe, piano, voice, it doesn't matter. To create this pitch, their fundamental frequency must be 440 Hertz. So how do we determine timbre then? How do we distinguish between whether these 440 vibrations per second comes from a bassoon, viola, horn, vibraphone? Well, partially due to the relative strength and weakness of these various overtones, these secondary vibrations that are produced along with the fundamental frequency. Some instruments emphasize brighter overtones, others understate them. Well, my main point is this. The perfect 5th is such a strong overtone of the fundamental frequency, it is acoustically present whether we play that chord tone or not. In other words, if I play this chord, you probably hear a major triad. And it is, but I'm not actually playing 3 different pitches. I'm only playing 2. The root and the third. I've left the 5th out of the chord completely. If I add the 5th back in, here it is without, and here it is with the 5th. It doesn't actually sound all that different to our ears, because it was already present as an overtone of this fundamental frequency. Here it is again, without the 5th. If I add any other pitch other than the 5th, it would sound like it didn't naturally belong to this chord. Here it is without anything. If I add this, that doesn't sound right. No, that's not right. Ah, that one feels natural. That's the perfect 5th above the fundamental. So again, the perfect 5th is a strong overtone of the fundamental and is acoustically present even if we omit it. So when voice leading the 2-5-1 progression, we're going to start by dismissing the 5th of each chord altogether. The 3 remaining pitches are the root, which goes into the bass, and the chordal 3rd and 7th of each chord, which will remain in the upper staff. Now currently, the individual voices aren't leading properly, they're just jumping around too much. Very disjunct. But if I invert the upper 2 notes of every other chord, the voices immediately become smoother. Notice that moving from the 2 to the 5, the chordal 7th goes down by step to the 3rd. The chordal 3rd remains stationary. It remains static, and it becomes the 7th. Likewise, if I move from the 5 to the 1, the 7th steps down to become the 3rd, and the 3rd of the 5 chord statically becomes the 7th. Together that sounds like this. But what if I want to start the progression with the chordal 3rd in the upper voice instead of the 7th? Well, the same rules apply. The 7th steps down to become the 3rd, and the 3rd remains static, becoming the 7th. Here we see the first 12 measures of Miles Davis's tune-up. Last time we determined that each 4-measure phrase contains a 2-5-1, first in D, then in C, a step lower, and then in B flat. So we're going to ignore the melody for now. So what is the first step in realizing these chords? Well, I want to remove the chordal 5th. Next, I want to place the root in the bass. That leaves the chordal 3rd in the upper staff. Now I want to invert either the 5 or I want to invert the 2 and 1 chords. And this smooths out our voice leading. So the 7ths should automatically step down to the 3rds, and the 3rds will become the 7ths. And I can apply this technique all the way through measure 12. That would sound like this. But this method won't quite work in the last 4 measures. But why not? Well, because it's not a true 2-5-1 progression. The B-flat chord in measure 15 is unexpected. We expect a D, the tonic of the preceding 2-5. But measures 13 and 14, let me say it that way, while measures 13 and 14 are going to match measures 1 and 2, the voice leading into measure 15's got to break out of that pattern. So the smoothest way for us to get from the 3rd and 7th of the A dominant 7th chord and get to the B flat major 7 chord is moving in similar motion by step up. Did you notice that I just committed a species counterpoint sin? I went in similar motion in 2 voices into a perfect 5th. Now, similar motion from a diminished 5th into a perfect 5th, right? All right, so since this is not counterpoint, we're not actually trying to create independently interacting melodic lines. So parallel and hidden perfect consonances aren't really a big deal here. Although in practice, personally, I still think it sounds smoother and stronger without them. What if we wanted to add the melody to this harmonic realization? Let's start by trying to restrict ourselves to 3 voices, the bass, and 2 upper voices, just like our harmony. So first I want to determine which voicing of the 3rds and 7ths most closely matches the range and contour of our melody. Now I don't want the harmony extending above the melody, so let's put the G, the 3rd of the E minor 7 chord, on top. Now the melody begins on A and steps down to meet this G, so I'm going to leave out the G completely from the harmony and allow the melody to take care of the chord tone at the end of the measure. Works well. Well, notice in measures 3 and 4 that the melody already matches the harmonic plan. It's got F sharp already in the melody. Measure 2, however, causes a problem. That upper harmony note G, we can't use that. I want the melody positioned at the top, so I can't use the G up there. Now, if I'm limiting myself to only 3 notes, I need the bass, the melody, and whatever chord tone is left. It's going to either be the 3rd or the 7th. In measure 1, the melody is decorating the 3rd of this chord. In measures 3 and 4, the melody is the 3rd of that chord, the F sharp. In measure 2, the D sharp isn't a chord tone, but the E is, and the E is the chordal 5th. Now, usually we've been leaving out the chordal 5th, but we can't do that here because it's the melody. So we got to leave something else out. Do you see how the C sharp leading tone will create a very smooth inner voice? This means we're going to have to leave out the chordal 7th out of the dominant 7th chord. But I think that bite of that melodic D sharp against the harmonic C sharp, it provides enough appeal that I think it distracts from the missing 7th. Alright, so for homework, I want you to practice realizing the harmony of the last 8 bars of Misty, which you did last time, and try your hand at finishing up measures 5 through 16 of Tune-Up. So on Misty, you need to put the root of each chord in the bass, you need to remove the chordal 5th from each chord, and then smooth out the voice leading, making sure that all the 2-5-1 progressions follow this paradigm. The 7th steps down to the 3rd, and the 3rd remains static, becoming the 7th. Don't worry about adding the melody onto Misty. I want you to try to do that for the rest of Tune-Up. So, see if you can manage to add the melody to our harmonic framework using only 3 voices, the root in the bass, the melody on top, and a harmonically supporting middle voice. Email me with any questions you might have. Thanks.